I was being humiliated. It was a scheme plotted between mother and son to deceive me inside my own home. But I wasn't going to be the fool in this story. They were going to pay for every lie. We had only been living in this house for 2 years. It had been my father's inheritance, but everything started when my mother-in-law, Mrs. Adeline, came to live with us. She had just separated and needed a temporary place. Elijah begged me so much that I agreed. After all, she was his mother, and I wanted to be a good wife. In the first few days, she was kind and helpful. She seemed genuinely grateful, but gradually I started noticing changes, especially strange looks when Elijah and I showed affection. One night, after an exhausting day at work, I came home dead tired. Mrs. Adeline was in the living room with a cup of tea in her hand. She smiled and said she had prepared it especially for me, with chamomile and calming herbs, because she had noticed how stressed I'd been. I was even touched by the gesture. I drank it all while we talked about our day. It didn't take long for a heavy drowsiness to take over me. My eyes started getting heavy in a way I had never felt before. I mentioned that I felt strange, and she just said it was accumulated fatigue, that I needed to rest. I went to the bedroom stumbling and passed out as soon as my head hit the pillow. When I woke up, it was already morning. Elijah wasn't beside me. I looked at the clock, and it was almost 10 o'clock. Never in my life had I slept that late on a weekday. My head was throbbing and I felt confused, almost drugged. I got up slowly and went to the living room. Mrs. Adeline was calmly having coffee, as if nothing had happened. I asked where Elijah was, and she replied that he had left early to take care of some things. I found it strange that he hadn't woken me up, but I tried not to think too much about it. In the following days, the scene repeated itself. Whenever I came home from work, there she was with that tea, and always with the same excuse that I needed to relax. And every time I slept deeply, without dreams, without waking up in the middle of the night, without noticing Elijah leaving or coming back. It was my sister who started planting the first seed of suspicion. She came to visit me one afternoon and was worried about my appearance. She said I looked pale, that I seemed drugged. I told her about the teas my mother-in-law had been preparing, and she found it strange. She warned me to be careful, said that wasn't normal. At the time, I laughed at her. I thought it was an exaggeration. Mrs. Adeline was annoying and intrusive, but she wouldn't do anything to harm me. But I started to think that maybe my sister was right. I started paying more attention. I noticed that Elijah was coming home late, leaving early, always with empty excuses. When I tried to talk, he would change the subject. And my mother-in-law always found a way to appear between us, interrupting any moment of intimacy. It was as if she was creating a barrier in our marriage. One night, I pretended I had a headache and refused the tea. Mrs. Adeline insisted so much that I almost took it to avoid raising suspicions, but I held my ground. She seemed uncomfortable for the first time. I went to the bedroom earlier and pretended to be sleeping. I stayed there, in the dark, with my eyes closed, waiting. I heard Elijah arrive home around 9 at night. I heard him and his mother talking quietly in the living room. I couldn't understand everything, but I caught fragments. She was saying something about me resting, that he had time. I stayed quiet because I wanted to find out what was happening while my mother-in-law supposedly drugged me with tea. Around 10:30, I heard the front door open and close. I got up slowly and went to the window. I saw Elijah getting into the car and driving away. He had left. He had left the house while he thought I was sleeping. I went back to bed and stayed awake, waiting. He only came back in the early morning, around 3 a.m. He entered the room silently, took a shower, and lay down beside me as if nothing had happened. The next morning, I didn't say anything, but I started looking for some evidence. I grabbed his phone while he was in the shower, and that's when my world started crumbling right before my eyes. Messages with a name I knew all too well, Greta, his ex-wife. Casual conversations, too intimate for people who had supposedly closed that chapter 25 years ago. Scheduled meetings, references to places they used to go. My breath caught in my throat. I felt suffocated, nauseous, dirty. Even with so much evidence, I needed to be sure. I needed to understand the extent of it all. In the following days, I continued accepting the tea, but I developed a technique. I would drink just a little, and, when Mrs. Adeline wasn't looking, I'd pour the rest into the living room plant pot. I would fake the drowsiness, go to the bedroom, but stay awake. And that's how I discovered the complete truth. Every time I was supposedly sleeping, Elijah would leave, and my mother-in-law would stay in the living room, calmly watching television, like a guardian making sure I wouldn't wake up to catch her son. That destroyed me inside. I was being humiliated. It wasn't just his betrayal. It was her complicity. It was the scheme plotted between mother and son to deceive me inside my own home. I decided I needed tangible proof. I hired a private investigator. I used my savings, that money I had been saving to renovate the house. I explained the situation, and he started following Elijah on the nights I was supposedly sleeping. It didn't even take a week for him to come back with photos. Elijah and Greta entering a motel. Elijah and Greta kissing. Elijah and Greta holding hands like a couple in love. But the worst discovery came when the detective brought me information I never expected. Greta was pregnant. And by the dates, by the conversations he managed to collect, everything indicated it was Elijah's child. His plan was to gradually take the inheritance I had received from my late father so that they could restart their life together. He was just waiting for the right moment to leave me. And my mother-in-law was actively helping with this plan, drugging me to facilitate her son's meetings with his ex-wife. When I saw those photos, all the proof of that betrayal, I couldn't even cry. I think I was beyond tears. I felt an overwhelming need to free myself from that marriage. I wasn't going to be the fool in this story. I wouldn't come out as the humiliated victim. They were going to pay for every lie, for every night they drugged me, for every second they played with my dignity. I planned everything down to the smallest detail. I waited for the perfect moment, a Friday night. I accepted Mrs. Adeline's tea and drank it all. I went to the bedroom and pretended to sleep. I heard Elijah leave, as always. I waited an hour to make sure he was far away. Then I got up. I went to the living room where my mother-in-law was watching her soap opera. I sat beside her. She was startled to see me awake. She asked if I was feeling okay. I just smiled and said we needed to talk. I put all the evidence in her lap and asked if she wanted to tell me anything. I told her to pack her things and leave my house, that if she didn't leave, I would call the police and report her for drugging me, that I had saved a sample of the tea, that I had proof of everything. She still tried to insult me, saying she was just helping her son be happy, that Greta was the love of his life, that I would never be enough. I replied that I didn't care about her opinion. I watched her pack her bags, crying, lamenting, but I knew those were false tears. She had never really liked me. She always mentioned Elijah's ex-wife as if she were the epitome of perfection. When she left, I locked the door, but it still wasn't over. When Elijah arrived in the early morning, he found his suitcases at the door and his mother sitting beside them. That night he had forgotten his house keys. He rang the doorbell desperately. He shouted my name. He threatened to break down the door. I just opened the window and threw down the envelopes with evidence of his lack of character. I said he had until dawn to get those suitcases out of there. Otherwise, I would put everything in the trash. That our story was over. That he could go be happy with Greta and his child, but far away from me. He had the nerve to say I didn't have the right to kick him out, that this was his house too, that I should sell the property because he wanted his share. I started laughing because I didn't imagine he would be so bold. The house was in my name. It had been my father's inheritance. Elijah had never put a cent into it. That was my territory, and I was going to defend it. His situation was about to get worse. Elijah worked at my brother's pharmaceutical lab. A month after the discovery, my brother used the excuse of cutting some expenses to fire him. He didn't want any contact anymore and said that Elijah didn't deserve his kindness. Elijah was desperate. He had been working for my brother for years and didn't expect to lose his job because of our separation. Without a job, without a fixed residence to live in, his life was falling apart. Today, 8 years later, I live alone in this house. It wasn't easy to move forward. I had to go to therapy to deal with the betrayal, with the feeling of having been manipulated for so long. But I learned something valuable. No one has the right to steal my peace, my dignity, or my home. Elijah married Greta. They had a child. My ex-mother-in-law lives with them, probably helping to take care of the grandchild. And me, I have my life back. I have the certainty that I made the right choice. Because the worst prison isn't being alone. It's remaining in a relationship where you're treated as a disposable obstacle. And I refuse to be disposable.